Hello and welcome to Useful Idiots Monday morning, where we watch the Sunday morning news show so that you don't have to. I'm Katie Halper.
I'm Aaron Maté. Good Monday morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. Always remember that to support the show and get bonus content, you can go to usefulidiots.podcast.com. That's usefulidiots.podcast.com.
And, excuse me. I'm getting a little emotional because I was about to wish you a belated happy birthday, Aaron Maté.
Oh, very kind.
Yeah.
Very kind. Thank you. Thank you.
Of course.
And thanks to everyone who did the same. I'm getting emotional.
Yeah.
Just thinking about all the birthday wishes.
That, yeah.
So thanks very much. Thank you.
But he's better at keeping a game face.
Yes.
Poker face. And of course, please do like the stream. Give it a thumbs up. It's a great way. You're not only giving a thumbs up to the show, but you're giving a thumbs up to Aaron Maté and his birthday and the birth of Aaron Maté. Yeah. All right. And Anna knows me so well. Good morning. All Katie wants you to do is smash that like, and we're off. All right. And we're off. Let's see. Where are we going first? Let us go to, of course, not surprisingly, the Middle East.
I thought we were just going to meet the depressed, where we always start.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Let's go to meet the depressed.
I'm like on an emotional roller coaster because of this birthday. Sorry about that. Let's go to meet the depressed.
Good Sunday morning. We begin with our brand new NBC News poll. The biggest takeaway: President Trump is more popular than in his first term, but voters have soured on his handling of the economy, one of his signature issues. 54% of voters disapprove of the president's handling of the economy, the first time Mr. Trump has ever had majority disapproval on the issue in NBC News polling. Just 18% of voters rate the economy as excellent or good, the lowest mark in our polling in more than a decade. The poll reflects an America that remains deeply divided. The president's approval rating, 47%, is as high as it's ever been, but a majority, 51%, disapprove of his performance.
Well, Trump will see that and claim a historical mandate, just like he said that winning the election by a couple million votes gave him a, mandate, a historical mandate. So here, majority of the country disapproves, yet he'll still claim, I think, that he has got a huge mandate.
Yeah.
Because his approval rating is higher than ever.
Yeah. Also, I was talking to some family members about Trump and the election, and they were like, I really think you shouldn't have voted for anyone but Kamala Harris even in a safe state like New York, because if you didn't, you helped him win the popular vote, and now he'll have a larger mandate. And I was like, the idea that Trump needs anything to claim that he's a mandate, he could have lost massively. He could have lost the popular vote massively. He would have claimed the same mandate. You know what I mean? Anyway.
And the fact that his approval rating is still high, though, for him, relatively, even though a majority also disapproves of his handling of the economy, it just shows that we're in weird times, because usually the economy is sort of the measure of how people see the president, but yet still his approval rating is high, and Democrats' approval rating is very, very low.
Yes.
Which my conclusion is not so much that people like Trump, but they just really don't like Democrats, and Democrats have a lot to work on.
Yes. And the approval rating for Democrats is 29%. Which is like the lowest rating in the 33-year history of this CNN poll.
On Wednesday, the president argued his on-again, off-again tariff policy is not rattling financial markets.
There's been a lot of on and off, some inconsistency.
There's no inconsistency. It's called flexibility. It's not called inconsistency. It's called flexibility.
Meanwhile,
it's kind of a good line. I gotta hand it to him. I think that's a good response. Whether or not it's true, sometimes it's true, but I think it's a good way to handle it.
Feelings toward the Democratic Party are at an historic low. 55% view the party negatively, and there's a divide among Democrats. On Friday, 9 Democrats, led by Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and Independent Angus King, who caucuses with them, voted with Republicans to advance a short-term spending bill to keep the government open.
As bad as the CR is, I believe allowing Donald Trump to take even much more power via a government shutdown is a far worse option. A shutdown would allow DOJ to shift into overdrive.
Now, before the vote, Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi released a statement defying Schumer, writing, quote, "Democrats must not buy into this false choice. The party divisions were on display."
Today was a bad day for the country, and I won't sugarcoat it. Today was also a bad day for the Democratic Party.
In this case, CR stands for complete resignation.
I think there is a deep sense of outrage and betrayal.
It's an unacceptable, unconscionable, and un-American spending bill.
Is it time for new leadership in the Senate?
Next question.
What level?
I do love that Hakeem Jeffries is consistent with his alliteration.
Yes.
Unconscionable, un-American. He's unapologetic about using alliteration, and
Right.
I like that about him. That's you know, I don't like anything else about him, but I do like
Right.
that about him.
I mean, talk about consistency, right? That's
Mhm.
the kind of consistency that critics are saying Trump doesn't have. And of course, he made a book out of that, which you can give to any child in your life who you hate. Kid's book, yeah.
Which do we have? Democrats keep showing up at every night fight with a casserole.
That's true.
Joining me now to
Great singer from
Yeah,
John
I like
Fetterman.
that. Yeah.
They keep showing it every knife fight with a casserole. Well, you know, if there's going to be a knife fight, you should have a casserole so you can
Yeah.
cut it up and serve it out to people. I don't know what he's so upset about there.
Oh, interesting. I thought you'd use it as a shield.
No, it's
You're
actually
saying
a
the
great way to
actual
make
food in it.
it's actually like a great way to make peace. Like there's a knife
Yeah,
fight.
you're
You say,
right.
"Hey everyone, I have a casserole. Let's cut it up and share it." So
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, I'll take that knife and I'll use it to cut off a
Yeah.
cut up a casserole. Okay, you're right. I like
it's a
it.
classic warmongering from John Fetterman.
Yeah.
Just not seeing the virtues of peace. Oh well. All right. Well, speaking of warmongering, Trump is bombing Yemen after campaigning as the peace guy, and over the weekend launching a number of strikes against what are called the Houthis, but they go by the name Ansar Allah. And why is he doing that? Because Ansar Allah has launched a humanitarian intervention to stop the genocide in Gaza. And whenever there's a ceasefire, they respect it. But whenever Israel breaks the ceasefire and
Right.
does things like, for example, block all aid going into Gaza, which they've done over the last few weeks, to a complete yawn from the U.S. media. It's supposed to be normal that a U.S. proxy is just flagrantly violating the law and imposing a new siege. Ansar Allah responds, and so they end up disrupting ships going through their area. So what did Trump do in response?
And let me just yes, he bombs. And Aaron, it's interesting that what you just said, you can't hear in any mainstream news. It's kind of an important part of the story, like why are they bombing? But they never start with that. They just present them as a bunch of terrorist pirates, violent pirates. It's kind of an important part of the story. But you never hear that because then people would understand why and realize that this is all something that the United States could control.
All right. Well, let's hear one example of this from Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio, interviewed by Face the Nation.
Our audience, just to explain, this Red Sea area is a really important transit point for global shipping. The Houthis out of Yemen have been disrupting transit there for some time. President Trump cited these concerns when he announced.
No explanation of why, right? Just starts with what they're doing. No explanation of why they're doing it.
Those naughty Houthis have been disrupting traffic. Someone had to finally step in.
Yeah.
Does it maybe have something to do with the fact that they openly say this is a intervention to stop the genocide of Gaza? And in this case, they're disrupting trade in the Red Sea in their area because Israel's blocking aid into Gaza, which is a violation of the ceasefire.
Right. So they're actually the ones who are upholding the law. And what they're doing is protesting the breaking of the law by the Western world.
They're conducting a humanitarian intervention.
Yeah.
And unlike previous humanitarian interventions launched by the U.S., this one actually is humanitarian because they're just trying to see a ceasefire protected and aid delivered to the people of Gaza.
Right. And it is their territorial waters. That's true. Someone as Cray 97 put in.
Trump cited these concerns when he announced the strikes. I'm wondering, how long will this campaign last, and will it involve ground forces?
Well, first of all,
by the way, again, I just have to point out her framing. It's not why should we be doing this? Is this a good idea? It's how long will it last? That's her question.
I just want to set my watch for how long this is going to go.
Yeah.
So give me a number, just so I can set my watch. All other questions can we put to the side, such as whether we have the right to do that. Why are we doing it? Why aren't we pressuring Israel to lift the blockade? Anyway, let me just set my watch. So let me know how long it's going to go.
Yeah, just give me a time frame. Yeah.
The problem here is that this is a very important shipping lane, and in the last year and a half, the last 18 months, the Houthis have struck or attacked 174 naval vessels of the United States, attacking the U.S. Navy directly 174 times, and 145 times they've attacked commercial shipping. So we basically have a band of pirates, with guided precision anti-ship weaponry, and exacting a toll system in one of the most important shipping lanes in the world. That's just not sustainable. We are not
a toll system. A toll system. This is not sustainable. This is violence. This is a real attack. I mean, the gall of talking about a toll system or ship disruption in the context of a genocide that they are protesting, that's okay. But it's this, they're real sticklers for traffic. For human rights and international humanitarian law, not so much, but traffic they are. Yeah. And by the way, as of 14 hours ago, 5 children and 53 people total have been killed by the U.S.
Going to have these people controlling which ships can go through and which ones cannot. And so your question is, how long will this go on? It will go on until they no longer have the capability to do that.
Well, what does U.S. intelligence tell us at this point? Because the U.S. had been conducting strikes for some time, but has not stopped the Houthis. So what's going to be different right now? Do you have more fidelity in the intelligence that would make this more successful?
Well, those strikes were retaliation strikes. So they launched one missile, we hit the missile launcher, or we sent something to do it. This is not a message. This is not a one-off. This is an effort to deny them the ability to continue to constrict and control shipping. And it's just not going to happen. We're not going to have these guys, these people with weapons able to tell us where our ships can go, where the ships of all the world can go, by the way. It's not just the U.S. We're doing the world a favor.
Yeah.
We're doing the...
Notice he says we're doing the world a favor. And what's her response? Yeah.
Go, by the way. It's not just the U.S. We're doing the world a favor.
Yeah.
We're doing the entire world a favor by getting rid of these guys and their ability to strike global shipping. That's the mission here, and it will continue until that's carried out. That never happened before. The Biden administration didn't do that. All the Biden administration would do is they would respond to an attack.
If you were to poll the world and say, would you rather the U.S. bomb Yemen to enforce the Israeli genocide in Gaza, or would you rather that the U.S. stop supporting the Israeli genocide in Gaza and actually force Israel to let in aid into Gaza? I think the vast majority of the world, if you go by the votes at the UN,
right,
would be saying we should do the latter. We should be pressuring Israel to stop the blockade of Gaza. So I think on behalf of the world, we're going to politely decline.
Yes, exactly.
This favor that Marco Rubio says that the U.S. is doing for it.
And that Margaret Brennan agrees.
These guys would launch one rocket, we'd hit the rocket launcher. That's it. This is an effort to take away their ability to control global shipping in that part of the world. That's just not going to happen anymore.
And it
so this will continue until that's finished.
All right.
All right. Well, so that's Marco Rubio. Let's hear from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, speaking on his former home, Fox News.
Restore that, and we will be unrelenting. I want to be very clear. This campaign is about freedom of navigation and restoring deterrence. The minute the Houthis say, we'll stop shooting at your ships, we'll stop shooting at your drones, this campaign will end. But until then, it will be unrelenting. We got the reports last night.
Why are U.S. drones there? Like, shipping is one thing, but like why are drones there? That's because the U.S. has actually been bombing Yemen for a very, very long time. So stop shooting at the drones that are bombing your country, okay? And then we'll stop bombing your country. I don't know. It's a weird message.
Yeah, it really is.
Right,
Yeah.
Maria, the Houthi capital felt like an earthquake. Dozens and dozens of precision heavy munitions dropping precisely on the targets that we wanted to hit, sending a very clear message. And the message.
So, Katie, I mean, you just said that they killed children. So,
Yeah.
is he saying that they wanted to kill children?
Yeah. Yeah.
He's
right.
bragging also that the capital, Sana'a, felt like an earthquake. So he wanted to terrorize ordinary civilians and then kill children. Is that the message he's giving us?
Yeah, exactly. Either he's lying and the U.S. is inept, or he's just a sociopath whose targets include children.
Message is clear to Iran as well, and the president said it in his truth.
They keep saying, they could end this. All they have to do is stop. Well, the U.S. could end this by demanding that Israel let in humanitarian aid. So there's another way this could be ended, yeah.
Your support of the Houthis needs to end immediately. We will hold you accountable.
Now he's talking about Iran, of course. Okay.
As the sponsor of this proxy, and I echo his statement, we will not be nice about it. This is not the Biden administration. The message is clear. We will come after the Houthis until they stop shooting at our ships, and the Iranians better stay out of it.
All right, so great. Yeah.
It's incredible. I don't remember what podcast I was listening to today. It just came up on my phone. It's not something I usually listen to. I think it's Apple News. And they just say, the Iran-backed Houthis. It's just they're just doing, propaganda and framing this as the empire wants it to be framed. You never hear the US back this, the Israel back that. It's kind of like the Hamas backed, right? You never hear the Likud backed.
Yeah, and Iran has given some support to Ansar Allah, including weaponry, but not. It's like a fraction of what the U.S. gives in terms of support to Israel. And of course, you can't compare Ansar Allah to Israel because Israel's an occupying power carrying out mass murder. Ansar Allah is a resistance movement involved in a very horrible civil war. In which the U.S. took the side of Saudi Arabia when Saudi Arabia intervened under Obama and has killed a lot of people. So it's a very different situation.
Right. It's very different. And also, as you point out, and also, again, if you're going to be consistent, then you have to call other people backed, right? So Israel has to be U.S. backed.
Okay, let's hear more from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth.
Who really seems like a sociopath.
We are pounding them militarily. By the way, to the Houthis, this isn't a one-night thing. This will continue until you say we're done shooting at ships, we're done shooting at assets.
This made me think of a one-night stand when he said a one-night thing, which is weird, but it did make me think it sounds like he's almost pledging his commitment. This is not a wham bam, thank you, ma'am. We're in it together. We're in it to win it, yeah. But if instead of a relationship, it was I guess, very abusive relationship.
I don't want a long, limited war in the Middle East. We don't care what happens in the Yemeni civil war. This is about stopping the shooting at assets.
I mean, it's not true that you don't care what happens in the Yemeni civil war because, I mean, it was Obama who first did it, but Obama took the side of Saudi Arabia,
right?
Which took a side in that war and was bombing Yemen relentlessly. And then Trump continued that in his first term. And so it's not true, actually, that we don't care what happens in that civil war. We've actually been very, very involved in that for a very, very long time. And this continues that, actually. So that's not even true. But let's keep it going. We
certainly have an interesting way of showing it, if that's the case, that we don't care.
Yeah, yeah.
And by the way, I'm sorry to interrupt 1 second. I know we're going to keep going, but you guys, you got to hit a like. I'd really rather not stop this. Just like the Houthis could stop this. If they just stopped intervening in our traffic, you guys could stop my interruptions if you just gave a like. So please do it. Okay.
And this warning is not a one-time thing.
It's not. Yeah.
It will continue.
It will continue.
It's going to be relentless. Okay.
We're not going to be nice.
Yeah, we're not going to be nice. Okay. Well, let's hear from Mike Waltz, the National Security Advisor, because not content with simply just terrorizing people of Yemen, we're also going to issue a new warning to Iran.
And Mr. Waltz, let me read from what President Trump said on Truth Social. He said to Iran, support for the Houthi terrorists must end immediately. Do not threaten the American people or worldwide shipping lanes. If you do, beware, because America will hold you fully accountable. Does that mean direct?
Ansar Allah might say, where do we threaten the American people?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think Ansar Allah's ever threatened the U.S. I think they've tried to intervene to stop a genocide. And it's very different. The American people is very different than what Israel does in Gaza. I just think that's an important distinction.
Yeah, they're projecting.
Military action on Iran is possible?
Well, all options are always on the table with the president, but Iran needs to hear him loud and clear. It is completely unacceptable, and it will be stopped. The level of support that they've been providing the Houthis, just like they have Hezbollah, just like they have the militias in Iraq, Hamas and others. The difference here is the Houthis have incredibly sophisticated air defenses, and they also have anti-shipping cruise missiles, drones, sea skimming types of attack drones, and other ballistic missiles even. They've launched dozens of attacks on multiple warships, dozens of attacks, over 175 on global commerce, sank multiple ships. I just think the American people need to understand what has happened here. The previous administration had a series of feckless responses. President Trump is coming in with overwhelming force. We will hold not only the Houthis accountable, but we're going to hold Iran, their backers, accountable as well. And if that means they're targeting ships that they have put in to help, their Iranian trainers, IRGC and others, that intelligence, other things that they have put in to help the Houthis attack the global economy, those targets will be on the table too.
Yeah.
I think one of the top questions on the Sunday news shows over the last decade is, will you consider bombing Iran? It's such a popular question. It's like we hear it almost every single week, and then you hear the answer, which is pretty much routine at this point. All options are on the table. They love to say this. All options are on the table. So yet another warning.
Bring a casserole.
Bring a casserole. Yet another warning of potentially going to war against Iran, because what could go wrong there?
Which, like, the media seems to be jonesing for.
Yeah.
And I just want to show a response. By the way, we have a tweet from Iran's Foreign Minister Sayed Abbas Araghchi. Let's take a look at this. The United States government has no authority or business dictating Iranian foreign policy. That era ended in 1979. Biden was last year bamboozled into handing over unprecedented $23 billion to a genocidal regime. More than 60,000 Palestinians killed, and the world holds America fully accountable. End support for Israeli genocide and terrorism. Stop killing of Yemeni people. It's a pretty good position to have.
Well, let's turn to another position that sounds pretty sensible to me, and that's from a guy named Donald J. Trump. And this was him not too long ago. This is in May of last year, while campaigning for president, talking about how he wants to be the president who avoids military force, who talks to other people to solve problems, and avoids things like bombing Yemen.
I look at your policies, I see secure the borders, bring jobs back. I look at the Democrats and many Republicans, and it's foreign war and foreign expansion.
That's right.
What is that?
I think it's just a failed mentality. It's crazy. You can solve problems over a telephone. Instead, they start dropping bombs. I see recently they're dropping bombs all over Yemen. You don't have to do that. You can talk in such a way where they respect you and they listen to you. Viktor Orban.
So there we go. They're dropping bombs over Yemen. He's talking about Biden. You don't have to do that. You can pick up the phone. So Donald Trump, where is this Donald Trump? Why don't you listen to this guy rather than dropping bombs over Yemen?
Right. Yeah. I mean, so again, either he's being flexible, right, i.e. inconsistent, he was lying, or I feel like maybe he's just like, he likes that position. He knows it's a good one to say out loud. It gets votes. And I could also see, he has that thing where he like just listens to the last person who's in the room with him. So, maybe he did want to not bomb, and then whomever is advising him on this was like, no, we should bomb. Anyway.
Well, he also listened to someone who told him it'd be a good idea to deport a green card holder, Palestinian, married to a U.S. citizen, and but who has been protesting against the genocide in Gaza. And there's a group called Beitar, which is a fanatical Zionist group that's taken credit for giving the Trump administration a list of people to deport, including Mahmoud Khalil, who is the student I'm talking about, the graduate I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And
let's start with a clip from Fareed Zakaria discussing this, because I think we get some really interesting legal context, and then we'll go to Marco Rubio on this. But here's Fareed Zakaria, and he's actually asking Noah R. Feldman, who is a Harvard law professor, about the legality of what's happening. But take a listen to how Fareed frames this.
Deportation. Khalil's supporters say all he has done is espouse pro-Palestinian views that are not anti-Semitic. To explain the legal dimensions of the administration's actions, I am joined by Noah Feldman, professor of constitutional law at Harvard. Noah, welcome. This gets to the sort of central question that in some ways was part of that hearing with the university presidents, right? Which is, does a university have the right to combat anti-Semitism, or are those views protected by the First Amendment?
Okay, so let's just take a minute to react to how Fareed Zakaria is presenting this. It's not about what Mahmoud Khalil said or did. He's presenting this as some kind of like litmus test, constitutional litmus test, constitutional law litmus test on hate speech. He's just basing the premise of his question is that what he's doing is anti-Semitic, and should the university be allowed to combat anti-Semitism? This is a guy, by the way, who has said, among other things, that, you know, Palestinian liberation and Jewish liberation are interconnected, and you can't have one without the other, or safety, either liberation or safety. And they're just framing this as a question of free speech and the limits of combating anti-Semitism and what kind of anti-Semitism falls under free speech. They're just sneaking in a totally disingenuous Hasbara talking point into the framing, into the premise. Okay, let's go back to the clip.
If you explain your views in the classroom or in a conversation, you are protected under the First Amendment, and you're allowed to say them, and that means the government can't punish you. And if you're at a private university, most private universities have rules of academic freedom that also protect your expression of your view. However, according to university rules and according to federal law as it's been interpreted by various relevant actors, if you discriminate or harass or bully somebody as part of an act of discrimination, then you can be punished for expressing anti-Semitic or racist views as part of that harassment.
So you've defined it very well, and then we get to this the hard test here, which is, suppose you're not in the classroom, it's not a private conversation, you are publicly espousing anti-Semitic or racist views. There are other people around there. Does that count as speech, or does that count as intimidation and harassment?
Why is he asking this question? I mean, if he wants to have a philosophical debate on this, sure, but he's asking this question in the context of Mahmoud Khalil, and there's been no evidence of him saying anything remotely anti-Semitic.
It's so disgusting. There's not a single piece of evidence against Mahmoud Khalil that implicates him in anything remotely illegal.
Right.
No anti-Semitism, no material support for Hamas, no even rhetorical support for Hamas, which would actually just be a matter of free speech.
Right.
And Fareed Zakaria, for some reason, in order to justify doing a segment on this issue, has to adopt the most cynical framing possible, which presumes that Mahmoud Khalil and the Columbia students are all guilty of anti-Semitism. It's just so insane.
Yeah.
It's so insane. And of course, and the guest doesn't correct him, or at least he hasn't so far.
Right. Yeah.
Because everyone just hears people, everyone just sees the sites of students, including, you know, brown students like Mahmoud Khalil, protesting a genocide, and in their bigoted brains, they just immediately go to anti-Semitism.
I like
It's like a brain disorder.
Brains.
It's a brain disorder,
is,
but
yeah.
yet the problem is the people who are afflicted with it dominate our society and appear on cable TV all the time.
Right. Bigoted brains disorder. I like that. Now, what is interesting is what we're going to see is that despite the fact that this is such a biased presentation, as we're going to see from the guests, it's such clear legally, it's so clear in black and white that even on this segment, they can't really go after Mahmoud. So let's watch this.
When you are standing, let's say, in a protest, you should, in principle, both under the university's rules and under the First Amendment, be allowed to say what you believe, no matter how repugnant it might be. When you're targeting what you're saying at particular people, and you're, let's say, in their face in such a way that it could be described as bullying or harassment, then you've crossed the line, and both the law and university regulations prohibit you from doing so.
And when you take a look at
Okay, again, he hasn't. That's not the good point yet. So here he is, not challenging the premise that he's targeting people and intimidating them. Okay.
At what the administration is doing in trying to deport Khalil and things like that. Now, it's a different situation where you have every right to revoke a green card or a visa. But what do you worry about the fact that this could be interpreted as an attack on the First Amendment?
It is an attack on the First Amendment. It's not close to an attack because the U.S. Supreme Court has held all the way back to World War II, so for 80 plus years, that if you are a non-citizen who's present here lawfully and you're living in the United States, as Khalil was on a green card, you have full First Amendment rights. So for the administration to deport him, if it's the case that they're doing so solely because of his expression of views that are protected by the First Amendment, then that is an attack on his First Amendment rights. And so by extension, it's an attack on everybody's First Amendment rights because there's no difference constitutionally between a citizen and a non-citizen with respect to free speech.
All right, so thank you for this, Fareed Zakaria. Yes, you had to go and smear an entire movement as anti-Semitic, but you did finally allow someone on TV to say that, yes, the persecution of Mahmoud Khalil is an assault on the First Amendment.
Right. Yes. And that's not all he says. Let's go back to that clip. So there are two parts to this that are so important. One is that green card holders have no less of a First Amendment right. And let's go to the next part of this.
The administration says this is not free speech. This is he supports a terrorist organization. Is that a legitimate distinction, or is one allowed to espouse support for a political organization?
Again, he doesn't. Mahmoud Khalil has never expressed support for Hamas.
Right.
So the framing is again disingenuous. But on the question of principle, say he had, which he didn't, but say he had, you're actually allowed to support political groups as long as you're not providing material support to them if they're on the terrorism list.
Right. Right. So yeah.
Because free speech.
Right. The U.S. Supreme Court has addressed this issue in the past. What they have said, in a famous opinion by the current Chief Justice, John Roberts, is that if you are materially supporting a terrorist organization, that is, you're working alongside them, then that could be prohibited by law. But if you're engaged in what is called uncoordinated advocacy, that is, you're just expressing your view that you think terrorism is great and you support terrorist organizations, that is fully protected by the First Amendment. And so unless Khalil were to be shown to have materially supported terror, which is a crime, his speech is protected by the First Amendment.
Noah Feldman, this was incredibly.
Okay, so pretty important, pretty black and white, legally speaking. And it's also important to add, it was amazing watching all these Trump defenders get themselves in pretzels trying to defend what he's doing, with his administration is doing to Khalil, and pretending that they know law. And what is so ironic about this is that they do all of this. They embarrass themselves by sounding like idiots. And then an official from the Trump administration actually said, the allegation here is not that he was breaking the law.
Yeah, they also said that someone else said that he's basically engaging in pro-Palestinian activity. So that's their basis for going after him. He's engaging in pro-Palestinian activity, which I guess now under Trump 2.0 is now illegal.
Right.
Because we are not America first, we are Israel first.
Yeah. Yeah. And, if I just have to add one more thing, which is that if Fareed Zakaria is so concerned with anti-Semitism, he must be really upset that the obscure law that they are using to target Khalil is the Immigration Nationality Act of 1952. And it was authored by an anti-Semite, Pat McCarran, and was commonly used at the time to target Jews. A good many of whom at this time were Holocaust survivors in terms of the ones trying to come in of Eastern European descent. So targeting them, trying to prevent them from immigrating to the U.S. because of communist leanings. So mazel tov, Fareed.
Okay, let's turn to Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who is the person behind this decision. He's the one who signed the order. This was on his orders that Mahmoud Khalil is being deported because the official reason is that Mahmoud Khalil interferes with the foreign policy of the U.S. by being an activist against the Israeli genocide in Gaza. And so as Secretary of State Marco Rubio invoked his power to deport someone because they interfere, I guess, with his job. This young Palestinian guy in New York City with an 8-month pregnant wife is making Marco Rubio's job difficult because Mahmoud Khalil opposes Israel genocide. So here's Marco Rubio explaining himself to Face the Nation.
Can you substantiate any form of material support for terrorism, specifically to Hamas, from this Columbia student? Or was it simply that he was espousing a controversial political point of view?
Well, not just the student.
And controversial, just to explain that, controversial means you see Palestinians as equal human beings.
Right, yeah.
That's the controversy here.
Right.
It's very controversial,
It's a hot take.
A lot of debates over it, it was a very nuanced issue. Are Palestinians equal human beings?
Right.
Discuss the controversy.
Right.
And Mahmoud Khalil fell on the side of the controversy that says, yes, Palestinians are equal human beings.
And we're going to do more. In fact, we every day now we're approving visa revocations, and if that visa led to a green card, the green card process as well. And here's why. It's very simple. When you apply to enter the United States and you get a visa, you are a guest, and you're coming as a student, you're coming as a tourist, or what have you. And
by the way, note how he keeps conflating visa and green card. He has a green card. He's a green card. Okay.
You have to make certain assertions. And if you tell us when you apply for a visa, I'm coming to the U.S. to participate in pro-Hamas events, that runs counter to the foreign policy interest of the United States of America. It's that simple. So you lied. You came. If you had told us that you were going to do that, we never would have given you the visa.
Okay, so let's just say, for argument's sake, that and this is not true, but let's say that doing what he's doing, protesting, calling for a ceasefire, negotiating with the university, let's pretend that is pro-Hamas activity. It's not. He didn't lie because I'm sure he didn't know that October 7th was going to happen. But again, this is ridiculous because he's not doing anything pro-Hamas. But not knowing how you're going to protest a genocide that hasn't happened yet is not a lie.
What you attest to when you come into the U.S. and receive a visa or a green card is that you're not going to break the law.
Right.
And if they felt as if he broke the law, what they could do is charge him with a crime.
Exactly.
But what Marco Rubio is acknowledging is that there is no crime. They just think that because he's taking part in protests against a genocide, which he's falsely smeared as being pro-Hamas, which is just not true, that means you're interfering with the foreign policy of the U.S. And that's the problem. You can't interfere, I guess, under Trump now with the foreign policy of the U.S. But by which they mean you can't even protest it. You can't protest it. Yeah, it's as if like Mahmoud Khalil was like conspiring to stop Marco Rubio from delivering a weapon shipment to Israel. They were just protesting it, which they have the right to do.
Right. Yes. Yeah. I mean, maybe he is being honest because U.S. foreign policy really is supporting genocide. So even though it's not a crime, I appreciate that he's saying that anyone who protests against a genocide is getting in the way of U.S. foreign policy. Thank you for clarifying.
Now you're here. Now you do it. So you lied to us. You're out. It's that simple.
But
is
there any evidence of a link to terrorism, or is it just his point of view?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, they take over. I mean, you should watch the news. These guys take over entire buildings. They vandalize colleges.
Intensely.
They shut down
I'm
colleges.
asking about this.
So is he actually alleging that shutting down a college with political protest is terrorism?
Yeah. And then, so if that's the case, what was January 6th?
Exactly.
Because they stormed the Capitol. Yeah. And again, was Mahmoud Khalil arrested for anything to do with these campus protest, taking over a building? Was he involved in that? Like by this logic, Marco Rubio could be held accountable for any crimes on January 6th because he's a part of the broader MAGA movement. It's like either you have an evidentiary standard or you don't.
Yeah. And guess what? They don't.
Well, then you should
Specific
know
justification for the revocation of his visa. Was there any evidence of material support for terrorism?
Was the negotiator negotiating on behalf of people that took over a campus, that vandalized buildings?
Okay, so now he's going after him because he was a negotiator. A negotiator is not going to be a militant extremist, right? The fact that, and again, that's not illegal, but the fact that Columbia University agreed to negotiate with him, if anything, shows that he had legitimacy in the eyes of the university. But apparently just being a negotiator, is that terrorism? I think so, according to Rubio.
Well, I don't think it's the place of the university or Marco Rubio to confer legitimacy on anyone. The question is, are they engaging in illegal activity or not? And the fact is, he's not. There's nothing. There's not a single charge against him. And again, it's so ridiculous. They can't even find a single statement from him that's like remotely controversial. All he's saying is he wants the liberation of his people. He even talked about how he's against anti-Semitism and that the Jewish people's liberation and Palestinian people's liberation are intertwined.
Yeah, and you can't have one without the other. Yeah.
Yeah, there's just nothing remotely
controversial
about this.
Aaron, you're of course right, but my point is just like even on their stupid level of making this like a character attack, it's just so funny that they use the fact that he's a negotiator against him. Like that makes him an unsavory character, which again, none of that has any legal standing, but even their like disingenuous, non-legal framing of it is such a fail.
Negotiating over what? That's a crime in and of itself that they're involved.
Okay, so negotiating is a crime in and of itself? No, I don't think so.
Involved in being the negotiator, the spokesperson, this, that, the other. We don't want.
Wait, he's actually saying out loud on television, and it's recorded, that it's a crime in itself to be a negotiator. Then if that's true, I guess Columbia University is also criminal. Well, I mean, they'd be happy saying that.
They took part in the conspiracy.
Exactly.
The conspiracy to negotiate.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't need these people in our country. We never should have allowed them in the first place. If he had told us, I'm going over there and I'm going over there to become the spokesperson and one of the leaders of a movement that's going to turn one of your allegedly elite colleges upside down, people can't even go to school, library buildings being vandalized, we never would have let him in. We never would have let him in to begin with. And now that he's doing it and he's here, he's going to leave, and so are others, and we're going to keep doing it. And by the way, I find it ironic that a lot of these people out there defending the First Amendment speech, alleged free speech rights of these Hamas sympathizers, they had no problem, pressuring social media to censor American political speech. So I think it's ironic and hypocritical. But
well, this is the point, Marco Rubio, is that you're doing the same thing now.
Exactly.
And this show is an example of being consistent. We were against the censorship of people in the Trump camp. We called out for example, the Hunter Biden laptop scam, and the Russiagate playbook of demonizing people whose views you don't like as being foreign agents, which is exactly what you're doing now and going after Mahmoud Khalil. So it's actually possible to be consistent. And Marco Rubio, speaking of being hypocritical, is adopting the same playbook as the Democrats did when they were in power, in censoring and trying to taint people as being foreign assets and apologists for a foreign power. That's exactly what Marco Rubio is doing now, except Marco Rubio is going a lot further in trying to deport someone for their views. Joe Biden, to my knowledge, never did that, never tried to deport someone because of their political views. Marco Rubio is taking it to a new extreme.
Yeah, and notice how unrepentant he is. And he's saying, we're going to keep going, we're going to keep doing this. And this is because they're also, they're totally ignoring and violating the law. They are deporting people to El Salvador, where Nayib Bukele is this like extremely scary kind of like free market carceral guy. And, they just violated a judge's order. A judge ordered Trump not to send these people to El Salvador, where they're going to be in these really dystopian work camps. And they just ignored it. And he said, turn the plane around. They're like, nope, we're not going to do that. And, another scary example of this, and this is already becoming widespread. A Brown University medical professor was deported after her visa that was valid until 2027 was overturned, even with the judge's order blocking her deportation. And this was over social media posts and signing of a letter. Disgusting. So much for First Amendment and free speech administration. Let's see. Let's play the rest of that clip, and then we'll move on.
Is this: if you are in this country to promote Hamas, to promote terrorist organizations, to participate in vandalism, to participate in acts of rebellion and riots on
she's just saying
campus, we never would have let you in if we had known that. And now that we know
it, only
you're going to leave.
pro-Palestinian people who are going to have their visas revoked, or are other points of view as well?
No, I think anybody.
Good question from Margaret. That's a good question. Credit given to where credit is due.
Except she should challenge his statement that Mahmoud Khalil's pro-terror, pro-Hamas.
Oh, of course. Right. No,
I mean, again,
yeah.
Even if he were pro-Hamas, he'd have the free speech rights to do that. But
he hasn't.
They're still falsely characterizing his views, and it's a part of an effort to demonize him.
Right.
And it should be challenged.
Right. So let's take a listen to how he responds to that, to this uniquely good question, in that the rest of her framing has not been good.
Of view as well.
No, I think anybody who's here in favor. Look, we want to get rid of Tren de Agua gang members. They're terrorists too.
Okay, so she explicitly asks him if this is only going to target people with pro-Palestine points of view and opinions. She's asking about points of view and opinions. And he goes, no, it's not going to target them. We're also targeting gang members. Okay.
Terrorists,
right.
terrorists.
But that's not an opinion. He's not saying we're targeting gang members because they think this, that, or the other. So he's actually implicitly answering her question and saying, no, this is only going to target pro-Palestine opinion.
President.
Palestinian people who are going to have their visas revoked, or are other points of view as well?
No, I think anybody who's here in favor. Look, we want to get rid of Tren de Agua gang members. They're terrorists too. The president designated them, asked me to designate, and I did, as a terrorist organization. We want to get rid of them as well. We don't want terrorists in America. I don't know how hard that is to understand. We don't want people in our country that are going to be committed.
Okay, so are you now accusing Mahmoud Khalil of terrorism? If so, why aren't you charging him with terrorism? Where's the terrorism charge? There's a really, there's a wide body of law to draw on to charge someone with terrorism. Why aren't you pressing a single charge against Mahmoud for terrorism? So they're defaming him. They're persecuting him and they're defaming him.
Yeah.
And it's really remarkable. It's really remarkable. And it's going, I mean, there has been some challenge to it from Democrats. There has, to their credit.
Yeah.
But it's a really important case because not only does it establish the precedent where we can deport someone for their free speech, but also we can defame them, we can smear them, use the government to ruin someone's character. And that's very ominous.
Yeah. And it is really disgusting. And what's interesting is you said some Democrats have opposed it. That's true. And who else has opposed it? Ann Coulter, not exactly not exactly anti-deportation. In fact, she even said in her tweet, I want to deport basically everyone, but this is not a good thing to do. And William Kristol, the extremely Zionist neocon. So if you're defending this, you're really in a weird political space.
All right, let's turn to the war in Ukraine. Trump is talking about talking soon with Vladimir Putin. And Steve Witkoff, his envoy, who's sort of taken over this whole portfolio from Keith Kellogg, he says that in his behind-the-scenes talks, Russia and Ukraine are closer to resolving their differences.
Back before this visit, there was another visit, and before that visit, the two sides were miles apart in where they were. The two sides are today a lot closer. We had some really positive results coming out of Saudi Arabia, discussions led by our National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, and our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. I described my conversation with President Putin as equally positive. So the two sides we've narrowed the differences between them, and now we're sitting at the table. I was with the president all day yesterday. I'll be with him today. We're sitting with him, discussing how to narrow it even further. That's
Poor Jake Tapper. Just look at Jake Tapper's face as he listens to Steve Witkoff talking about how we're closer to a peace deal that could end the Ukraine proxy war. This is not good news for Jake Tapper, who spent years cheerleading for the proxy war. And now the U.S., the chief sponsor of it, is looking about bringing it to an end. But Jake Tapper is going to do all he can to try to block the peace deal. So here he is doing his best.
So as Secretary Rubio puts it, is it now clear that Putin is the impediment to peace right now?
Please tell me, is Putin, can I still keep blaming Putin? Is he the impediment to peace? Please.
Look
Steve,
how nervous he looks. He's so scared.
I'm begging you. This is my life here. Okay, this is my life's work. I mean, on top of being a propagandist for Israel, he's also been a top propagandist for the Ukraine proxy war. So this is hard to handle for Jake Tapper.
But don't you see the pain and fear in his eyes, Aaron?
I do.
Don't you empathize with him?
I do. You know, I'm trying to summon the empathy for Jake Tapper. It's not coming.
It's not coming. Okay.
You know, it's like that line from Arrested Development where Job was like, the tears aren't coming. The tears aren't coming. Like, the empathy is not coming yet for Jake Tapper for me.
I think, look, I don't want to put words in President Putin's mouth, but I think he's indicated that he accepts the philosophy of President Trump. President Trump wants to see an end to this. I think President Putin wants to see an end to this. I think President Zelensky wants to see an end to this. I think that there are specific conditions in the field. There's a 2,000-kilometer border that where there's all kinds of fighting going on currently between Russian and Ukrainian troops. There's a Kursk region that's important to think about here. These are all details that have to get worked out at the table, and all sides, I believe, are committed to doing that.
Well, if that's true, it's bad news for people like Jake Tapper and other warmongers in Washington who have spent 3 years plus propagandizing for this horrible war that's killed hundreds of thousands of people. And for what? And now, if it actually comes to an end, that Ukraine will settle with a far worse deal than it could have gotten back in the spring of 2022 when it walked away from the Istanbul peace talks, as we've covered, and people like Jake Tapper still refuse to acknowledge. But it happened, and it's just such a travesty. But if this war can come to an end, then the Trump administration deserves credit, despite all the other horrible things they're doing. And whatever their motivations are, this would be a genuine good thing.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah.
All right. Well, how is Steve Witkoff handling the Israel-Palestine front? Because there, a so-called ceasefire remains, but Israel's broken it many times by bombing people, including aid workers in the last few days, a mosque in Gaza. But now there's a dispute over the next phase of the ceasefire, and the U.S. is involved in brokering it. But Steve Witkoff says that Hamas's new terms, whatever they are, which he won't specify, are unacceptable.
This proposal is a non-starter, Jake. I spent, along with Senior Policy Director Eric Traeger from Mike Waltz's office, I spent close to 7.5 hours at the Arab Summit. We had really positive conversation there. But I would describe it as game-changing, but for Hamas's response. So we spent a good deal of time talking about a bridge proposal that would see the release of 5 live hostages that included Idan Alexander, and also, by the way, see the release of a substantial amount of Palestinian prisoners held in Israeli jails, which would be a wonderful thing for these Palestinian families. And I thought the proposal was compelling. The Israelis were informed about it and advised about it beforehand. And after waiting for 2 or 3 days from Hamas, which is their usual mode, we got an unacceptable response. I'm not going to go into the specific details of what made it unacceptable, but it was totally unacceptable.
Oh, that's interesting. I wonder why not.
So we got to just take his word for it. Okay. Yeah. Oh, it's unacceptable. All right. Well, all right.
He's good at unacceptable dar. He doesn't have to give us substance on it. He just,
It's unacceptable.
I think there's an opportunity for them, but the opportunity is closing fast. What happened with the Houthis yesterday, what happened
with the Houthis and the blowfish.
What happened with strike? What happened with Houthis? The U.S. bombed them? He mean it killed a bunch of civilians? Is that what he means?
To inform as to where we stand with regard to terrorism and our tolerance level for terrorist actions.
Well, given that you just engage in terrorism and terrorist actions, I guess you have a pretty high tolerance level for it.
And I would encourage Hamas to get much more sensible than how they have been.
Well, that's interesting because Yedioth Ahronoth, the Israeli newspaper, reported that Netanyahu once again sabotaged the hostage release deal that would free that hostage.
Acceptable. Totally acceptable, according to the Trump administration. Hamas's demands, whatever they are, unacceptable.
Unacceptable, right? Yeah.
Netanyahu sabotage, acceptable. Hamas's demands, whatever they are, we don't know, unacceptable.
Unacceptable, yeah.
Maybe Hamas is saying, hey, can you stop blocking aid into Gaza for the upteenth time? Unacceptable.
Right. Unacceptable, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's turn back to the war in Ukraine with Lindsey Graham.
Oh, yeah.
Reliable voice of warmongering on corporate TV. Here's Lindsey Graham talking about the peace talks over Russia and Ukraine.
The additional Russian strikes in Ukraine overnight. You have been an advocate for Ukraine.
Yeah.
You heard the Secretary of State? Yeah. You heard Ambassador Witkoff.
Yeah.
Is Putin playing for time? No. Is he playing President Trump?
They love this question. There's another clip, by the way. They use the same framing. Is he playing President Trump? And Margaret, remember Margaret was one of the people who, Aaron, remember you said you had this joke. It's like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we sanctioning Russia yet? Are we sanctioning Russia yet? She's a big fan of the proxy war and of sanctions. So anyway, just keep an eye out for that.
I don't know yet, but I do know you play President Trump at your own peril. What Trump did to get Ukraine at the table was tough, and it worked. So if Putin is sincere about wanting peace, accept the ceasefire on the same terms as Ukraine and quit trying to mix the two, ceasefire and peace deal. What I would advise the Trump administration to do is to tell Putin, are you going to accept the ceasefire on the same terms as Ukraine or not? If you're not, go back to maximum pressure. I have legislation that will overwhelmingly pass the United States Senate that will crush the Russian economy, and I'm willing to move forward if I have to. But we're talking about ceasefire, and we're talking about peace. We weren't talking about that in
I'm willing to move forward if I have to. Like, are you now a party to the war? Like the Lindsey Graham army is ready to move forward with crushing sanctions on Russia. Look, Russia has already said that Trump ceasefire, they politely declined because they don't need a pause to the war. They're winning it. Right. So why would they pause it? And what they said is a ceasefire is fine if it leads to a permanent peace deal. And Lindsey Graham is saying that's unacceptable. He just wants a 30-day pause. So I don't know, Ukraine can rearm or something. He wants to basically continue the same strategy of using Ukraine to bleed Russia. And we don't know yet exactly which way the Trump administration is going to go. I suspect, though, well, actually, I'm not going to make a prediction because who knows with these people. But Lindsey Graham clearly wants to continue the same strategy. And we'll see whether Trump has anything different in mind. Because Marco Rubio last week acknowledged the highest level person to do it, that this is a proxy war. And so the Trump administration has a lot of agency. Do they continue the proxy war, or do they actually use their leverage to resolve the issues that led to it? And we'll see. We'll see whether people like Lindsey Graham win out, or if there's more sane voices in Washington whose voices will be heard. We'll see. But I'm glad that Lindsey Graham is prepared to move forward with crushing the Russian economy if he needs to.
Yeah, I know. It's like is he a soldier in this war? Is he a general?
Yes, he really is. And his weapon is sanctions, which have already been tried. Like that's the thing. Right. Like they've already tried that. Like Joe Biden was so proud of the fact that he reduced the ruble to rubble. That was his line,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah,
it hasn't really panned out like that.
Well, and let's finish this clip because there's still a couple another gem in there.
Administration, but to me, Putin's a predator. The best way to judge Putin is not in a 3-hour meeting, but 30 years of action. And I see no indication that he's going to stop being a predator against Ukraine until the pain is too large. So if he refuses to cease fire, That tells me all I need to know.
Wait, by the way, 30 years of action. Putin's only been president of Russia for like, I don't know, 25 years or so. So he's expanding the window there. But anyway, look, Putin's a predator and we have to inflict pain.
Yeah.
You've been doing that. This has been your strategy all
exactly.
along. It hasn't worked. He's winning the war. Try something different, like negotiations.
Right. Well, no, you can't negotiate with a predator.
Can't negotiate with a predator. No.
Yeah. And is NATO predatory, by the way, at all?
Yeah.
Or the U.S.? All right, sorry, I know this is painful. Let's wrap up this clip.
Any reason to believe that President Trump would sign the legislation you say you can use to put more sanctions on Russia? Because he hasn't put more sanctions on Russia in a significant way at all.
See, she's sanctions thirsty.
Very upset. Very upsetting. He has not imposed the sanctions, Senator.
I think he's waiting to see what kind of response he gets from the discussions that Witkoff have, who I like Steve, and I'm glad he's doing what he's doing. I think Trump's going to talk to Putin this week. You can't solve a problem until you talk to the person who's creating the problem, and the problem is Putin. He's a predator toward Ukraine and the region at large. I hope President Trump can convince Putin to go to the peace table, to engage in ceasefire, and to find a win-win solution for both countries to stop the killing. You'll never know till you try, and there's one person on the planet capable of doing that, and that is President Trump. If Putin is playing Trump, he will regret it.
Putin the predator. Here's a new talking point. Putin the predator.
I love this idea that the only person in the world who can resolve the Ukraine crisis is the former host of The Apprentice, Donald J. Trump. Like, there's no one else with the negotiating skills to resolve that war.
You're fired.
Yeah. Okay. Well, stay tuned. Stay tuned. We'll know more this week. All right. Turning to domestic issues, there's a lot of anger among Democrats against Chuck Schumer, because Chuck Schumer, after saying he wouldn't, he went ahead and voted for the new continuing resolution from the Republicans to fund the government, which includes, a lot of their pet projects, including targeting Medicaid. And Democrats are angry about Chuck Schumer going along with that. So here is Senator Chris Murphy interviewed on Meet the Press.
Leader Schumer is the best person to lead your caucus in this moment?
Senator Schumer certainly can lead this caucus.
Is he the best person?
He can lead this caucus, but we need to have a conversation inside the caucus about whether we are willing to stand up to Republicans. Listen, we have options. We could decide to not proceed to legislation as an ordinary course of business. There are big fights ahead of us, like the debt ceiling, like another potential government shutdown in 6 months. So we have opportunities as a caucus to stand up and meet this moment. And I think the American people are demanding that we do that.
Just yes or no before we move on. Do you have confidence in Leader Schumer?
I still support Senator Schumer as leader, but I think the only way that we are going to be effective as a caucus is if we change our tactics, and we have to have a conversation inside our caucus to make sure that we are going to do that.
So let's talk about.
All right, it's not exactly a ringing endorsement of Chuck Schumer. No. And someone else who was asked about this is Congressmember Jasmine Crockett of Texas, who was on CNN.
Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York, some of your fellow House Democrats say, and not just progressives, by the way, we've heard that moderates have said this too, that they're ready to support her to challenge Chuck Schumer in a Democratic primary. Would you get behind that?
That's 4 years from now. If you were asking me at least in 2 years, then I would have an absolute answer. But I can tell you that there are a lot of people that are watching his leadership in this moment. This is the moment. We don't even know what elections will look like in 4 years, if we will have elections. And so I definitely think that younger, fresher leadership may be something that many of us, not just depending on what part of the spectrum you're on, but many Americans may be looking for, especially in the state of New York.
All right. I mean, it's pretty obvious where you stand.
Yeah.
I don't think you can avoid the question just by saying that in 4 years we might not have an election.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, anything, you could respond with that to literally any question about politics.
Yeah. So it's pretty clear that Chuck Schumer's lost the confidence of many Democrats, and we'll see where it goes. But I don't think that's a good excuse to avoid answering the question, is saying,
Right.
well, in 4 years there might not be an election, so sorry, I can't tell you.
Right. Yeah.
Can't tell
And
you.
again, they're obviously, trying to be diplomatic, but Schumer is being a total coward. But also, there's the danger of the rotating villain, right? Where it's just about one person. And this is a systemic problem for the Democrats. I mean, at the same time, we should be highlighting Schumer's fecklessness, but we should also remember that it's not just Schumer.
It's not just Schumer. It's not a Tuma, and it's not just Schumer.
Right. Yeah. It's not just Schumer. It's not just Schumer. Yeah. All righty. Well, I think we're at the end of the show, right?
We are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let's see. Let's just read a couple of super chats. We don't have time to get to all of them, but thank you so much to those of you like Wadeworth. Thank you so much for your generosity. And yeah, I think that's about it. The Houthi, let's see. Ed Lidawi says the Houthis are the Yemeni government, not some random rebels. This American Palestinian absolutely loves these two Jews, their beautiful hearts and bravery. Thank you. These two Jews. That could be a segment we do, Aaron.
Well, there's that rap group from the 90s called Two Live Crew. So really right now we're two live Jews.
Exactly. That is true. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Yeah. That can be our album name.
That could be our album name. Yes.
Unless they sue us. Yeah. Please don't sue us. Two Live Crew. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a great show. Make sure you like it if you haven't already. Tomorrow on the Katie Halper show at 7 p.m. I'll be talking to Norman Solomon, who has a great piece on how bad J Street is, the liberal Zionist organization, and we'll definitely be discussing Columbia University.
All right. Thanks so much for watching Useful Idiots Monday morning. Again, to support the show, keep it going. Go to usefulidiotspodcast.com. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.